Americans thought Europe was like America and got it completely wrong. They landed with confidence. Same Western world, same movies, same brands, same language. Right? How different could it possibly be? That's what they thought until the first shock hit. It usually starts at the airport. An American traveler steps off the plane expecting something familiar. Big roads, big cars, ice in every drink, free refills, smiling strangers saying, "How are you?" to everyone. Instead, smaller cars, smaller streets, no ice, no free refills, and people who aren't rude, just not performing friendliness on command. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. And that's when the realization slowly creeps in. Europe isn't America with an accent. It's an entirely different mindset. One of the biggest culture shock moments for Americans in Europe happens at restaurants. In the US, tipping is almost automatic. Servers depend on it. The customer is king. The bill comes fast. The table turns quickly. Efficiency is everything. But in many parts of Europe, the server doesn't rush you. In fact, they might not even bring the bill unless you ask for it. Because dining isn't about flipping tables, it's about time, conversation. Americans sitting there waiting for the check while locals linger for 2 hours over coffee and dessert often feel confused. Is the service bad? Are they ignoring us? No. You're just in a different rhythm. An American leaves a 25% tip out of habit. The server looks surprised. In many European countries, service is already included. Tipping is modest, sometimes just rounding up. That awkward moment? That's culture shock in Europe. But that's just the beginning. Let's talk about work culture. In the United States, hustle is glorified. Grind now, sleep later. 2 weeks of vacation per year is normal. Some people don't even take it. Productivity is identity. Then Americans move to Europe and discover something that feels almost illegal. 4 weeks of paid vacation, sometimes more. Long lunch breaks, entire countries slowing down in August. Emails that can wait until Monday. Work-life balance isn't a buzzword, it's protected. In countries like France or Germany, employees may legally disconnect after work hours. Imagine telling an American boss, "I'll respond next week, I'm on holiday." In the US, that might cost you your reputation. In Europe, it's normal. Americans who thought Europe worked like America suddenly realize the system runs on a different philosophy. Work to live, not live to work. And then comes healthcare. Many Americans grow up thinking long waits and poor quality define universal healthcare. But then they meet Europeans who don't panic about ambulance bills, who don't fear bankruptcy from surgery, who don't avoid doctors because of cost. The system isn't perfect. No system is. But for many Americans abroad, this becomes one of the biggest mindset shifts. Healthcare isn't tied to your job. It's not a corporate benefit. It's a public service. That realization hits hard. But geography might be the most humbling lesson of all. Some Americans assume Europe is small, compact, almost like one big country with different flavors. But Europe isn't a single nation. It's dozens of countries, dozens of languages, different histories. Driving 2 hours in Texas might keep you in Texas. Driving 2 hours in Europe could land you in another country, another language, another currency. The cultural differences between Italy and Sweden are massive. Between Poland and Portugal, even bigger. Americans who expected basically the same thing everywhere quickly learn that Europe is layered, ancient, and deeply regional. And speaking of ancient, history hits differently in Europe. In America, a 200-year-old building is historic. In Europe, you can casually walk past structures that are 800 years old. Medieval streets, Roman ruins, cathedrals older than the United States itself. Imagine living in a city where your apartment building might be older than your country. That changes perspective. Then there's transportation. Americans are used to driving everywhere. Big highways, massive parking lots, suburbs stretching endlessly. In many European cities, cars are optional. Trains connect countries, buses run on time. Walking is normal. Groceries are carried by hand. Cities are built for people, not just vehicles. An American expecting wide parking spaces and drive through everything suddenly finds themselves navigating narrow cobblestone streets where cars barely fit. That's not inconvenience, that's urban design from centuries ago. Even shopping feels different. In the US, 24/7 convenience is king. Stores open late, some never close. In parts of Europe, shops close early, some close on Sundays. Entire streets go quiet. To Americans, this feels shocking. Why would a store choose not to make more money? Social norms are another invisible wall. Americans are expressive, outgoing, quick to chat with strangers. In parts of Europe, people are more reserved, not unfriendly, just private. Smiling at strangers on the subway? That might get you a puzzled look. But once trust is built, friendships can run deep. Then there's language. Many Americans assume English will carry them everywhere. And yes, many Europeans speak excellent English. But expecting everyone to switch automatically? That's where misunderstandings begin. Europe protects its languages, its identity, its culture. Ordering food in Paris without even attempting a bonjour? That's not charming. That's careless. These little assumptions add up, and here's the twist most Americans don't expect. Europe doesn't aspire to be America. It has its own systems, its own priorities, its own strengths and weaknesses. The American way isn't the global default, it's just one model. For Americans living in Europe versus USA, the comparison becomes deeply personal. Some fall in love with the slower pace, the public transportation, the cafe culture, the safety nets. Others miss the convenience, the customer service intensity, the ambition-driven energy. Neither side is perfect, but assuming they're the same, that's where people get it wrong. And perhaps the biggest realization of all? Freedom looks different depending on where you stand. In America, freedom often means independence, opportunity, the ability to build from scratch. In Europe, freedom might mean security, guaranteed time off, healthcare access, walkable cities, strong labor protections. Two different interpretations of what it means to live well. When Americans move abroad expecting a mirror reflection of home, they often feel frustrated at first. Why isn't this faster? Why isn't this bigger? Why isn't this open 24/7? But over time, many begin asking different questions. Why am I less stressed here? Why do people seem less rushed? Why do families spend more time together? Why do cities feel alive without needing a car? That shift, that's the real story. Europe was never trying to be America, and America was never trying to be Europe. They developed separately. Different histories, different wars, different social contracts, different priorities. And when those worlds collide through tourism, immigration, or study abroad, the misunderstandings can be funny, awkward, even humbling. Because the moment you realize the world doesn't revolve around your norms, you grow. And maybe that's the biggest lesson Americans abroad discover. Not that Europe is better, not that America is better, but that assuming sameness blinds you to richness. Culture shock in Europe isn't about embarrassment, it's about perspective. It's about realizing that normal is relative, that convenience isn't universal, that work ethic isn't one size fits all, that social systems reflect collective values. And once that realization settles in, you stop comparing, you start observing, you start appreciating. So the next time someone says, "Isn't Europe basically like America?" you'll know the truth. It's not. And that's exactly why it's fascinating. If you've experienced culture shock in Europe, or if you're an American living abroad, what surprised you the most? The tipping? The work-life balance? The transportation? The history? Drop your experience in the comments. Because the conversation between America and Europe is far from over. And if you think this was eye-opening, wait until you hear what happened when Americans tried navigating European labor laws, strict rental rules, and ancient bureaucracy. In Part 2, we're diving into the stories Americans never expected, from lease agreements that can't be broken easily, to labor protections that left U.S. managers stunned, to quiet neighborhoods where even mowing your lawn at the wrong time can get you fined. Because thinking Europe was like America was just the first mistake. Understanding why it isn't? That's where things get really interesting. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the differences between America and Europe, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more global culture stories, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And remember, the world is bigger than what feels familiar.